Hello, humans. Master DinnerFlax here, bringing you low quality content you deserve. And today, I will actually be trying something a little strange. Now, I don't know what inspired me to do this, but you could even go way back on my channel and find some old deck list for this that's really bad and really dated. Kind of shows how terrible I was at deck building. But the very first video on this channel is a Chaos Stun deck profile. And you might be asking, what the hell is Chaos Stun? Those seem like contradictions. Now, if you haven't been playing for a while, Chaos Stun was a deck that came... Well, realistically, it'd been around for a very long time. But the concept was very simple. You are going to run removal and stun monsters such as Thunder King, Doom Calc, Haiku, Raiko, Effect Veilers. You'd run very stunny monsters that would slow the opponent down to a halt, and then as they're trading card for card your card as a stun deck is intended to do, you would then randomly drop a chaos monster and end the game. Because all the monsters you were using to facilitate your removal and your floodgates, they were also actively contributing to your chaos fodder. So pretty much it laid out a very simple win condition. If they couldn't beat your pluses, your 1-for-1, and your floodgates, if they couldn't beat your weenie monsters, keeping them from playing, they lost anyways. However, if they did beat it, you had chaos monsters to completely wipe up whatever was left of them. Because in order for them to, back in the day, out all this removal, out all these floodgates, they would have to spend almost their entire hand, if not their entire hand, make a very mediocre play, try to establish something, and then once you drop a chaos monster, that pretty much ended the game. This was Chaos Stun. Now, even on paper, the deck makes absolutely no sense. It's a stun anti-meta deck, but there are over 20 monsters in it. How is that the case? Well, back in the day, when Heavy Storm was around, and there was one Judgment and sometimes Starlight Road, it was really, really hard to justify just playing 20 trap cards when all playable trap cards at the time were semi-limited, if not limited. And then you were just left with crap. The Sacred, just crap. There were not a lot of good traps like we have now. And Floodgates, something interesting to know, Floodgates back in the day were not as effective as they are now. It took Royal Oppression about 5 years to become a playable card. And it took Vanity's Emptiness, well, it only took it 3 years. The previous 3 years before it became a very good card was effectively unplayable, except in very, very strange mirror matches. Rivalry goes in. Those cards were absolutely awful. Outside of the side deck, rarely. Floodgates didn't work the way they do now. And not only that, when Heavy Storm's in the game, saying, I got this Floodgate, is saying, hey, draw an out. And I'm playing a stun deck, so I'm going to poke you very slowly until you get to that out. So you had to play... You couldn't just play 5 monsters and then call it a day with trap cards. It literally just didn't work. Even now, it doesn't really work. It's just people do it to be shitlins. But the way to make up for this is hand traps, and some of the only ones were Maxi, Effect Veiler. DD Crow was okay sometimes against certain matchups. Droll existed, but was awful. It literally had no effect during this time. Except I think windups. No, even then it wasn't good. So there were very limited hand traps, but the best one at actually stopping your opponent was Effect Veiler, and it had the very high benefit of being a light monster, because during this time there actually were not a lot of good light stun monsters, outside of Thunder King, so you really needed extra lights to just have. An Effect Veiler could also just throw itself at something to do effectively nothing, just so you could drop a Chaos Monster. So, like, you're looking at these monsters. Doomcal, very, very unplayable now, but back in the day, there weren't very many hand traps that could bait it out. And you couldn't really... You had to force it out. Like, you could only bait it with Max C or Effect Veiler, but if you didn't have those, you had to just eat the negate and try to play next turn. And if they followed up with another Doomcal, then it could put you really far behind, especially since Doomcal being one of the biggest monsters, like physically attack-wise, was pretty rough for pretty much any deck to deal with. But like I said, now this card's genuinely not a playable card because you negate something, it either didn't matter, they had it in a chain link where it won't negate. Well, yeah, it just many problems with this card. Kaiku, funny enough, I think is probably the best card in this deck that has aged the best, just because of the fact that this line right here, your opponent cannot banish cards from either player's graveyard. That effect is actually insane. It being a dark spellcaster also just makes it super, super searchable by a huge amount of cards. Like, this card is actually really cool, and I think when I get to the point, I'm probably going to use this when I get to my point. Tour Guide, this is the reason I even wanted to make the video. Tour Guide from 2011 to early 2013 was the most powerful normal summon in the entire game outside of Thunder King, and people made the argument that this was above Thunder King because of the fact that this was not a level 3, this was a rank 3, and it put 2 darks in your grave and whatever attribute the rank 3 you made was. And there was a long while where rank 3 was the best XC from around the 2011-2012 standpoint, just because of Tour Guide. Tour Guide, you can look up this game's history about all the stuff about Tour Guide. There's a legitimate reason why she is the face of Duel Links. She has a huge history in this game's competitive landscape. And I would actually advise you guys to go check it out because there's just so much history behind this card. I really enjoy playing it. I'm really glad that it came back to 2 because while it's at 1, it is soft banned in every deck not Burning Abyss. You can't play it in any other deck besides Burning Abyss while it's at 1. But now that it's at 2, you can actually like try it in other decks to see if you need a rank 3 engine or maybe like a Leviair play, just things like that. Like, obviously, that strategy is really slow, and the only deck that is probably going to be playable in is Burning Abyss, and I'm under the opinion Burning Abyss just isn't very good anymore. Even with the block BA stuff. That deck's too high variance. And then Tour Guide package. This is also another thing I wanted to tell you guys. People were actually just used to be not very good at Yu-Gi-Oh! I would say the quality of players now is higher than back then, because realistically, you want to Tour Guide into Sangan if you're not making a rank 3 play. You just want to like force your opponent to deal with your board and get a Sangan search. But most of the time you would just go Tour Guide rank 3 and call it a day. This actually shows how terrible we were. Sangan is a Garnet. It's not a terrible Garnet, especially pre-errata, but it was kind of a Garnet. It was the worst part of the Tour Guide engine. It's just that when Tour Guide got the Sangan, it was really powerful because that's a +1 play and a Sangan, which was a limited, about to be banned card. But we were so bad, we decided, let's play another Garnet for these 2 of Tour Guides. And that was Night Assailant. This card has no effect outside of being a Maneater bug. And that's it. We thought this was very good because you could summon it off Tour Guide. When it was at 3, there was literally no reason to play this. But the literal strategy behind this is if you draw 2 Tour Guides, you could still activate the card. which is so terrible. Like, it's actually mind-boggling because there's no reason to do this. We could have been, if we had the skill back in the day that I believe we have now, the formats would have looked a lot different. You can go back to, you can look at people playing modern day goat control, and people have really warped that deck to make it a lot better than the lists that were back then. It's just, as you grow older, you start learning things, and you can really bend this game to the way you want it. Cyber Dragon, we didn't have Mega Fleet yet, so this just outed Zen Mains. And Zen Mains was probably the best rank 3 of all the rank 3s. If I told you there was a time where monsters that can't be destroyed by battle were insane, this was actually that time. Spirit Reaper was one of the most difficult things to out in the game, and it was a dark level 3, so it complemented the tour guides if they got effect bailered. It's weird that there was a time with Spirit Reaper, not only was it good, it was very good. And a lot of people will like say, oh, what's the difference between this and Marshmallow? This card actually has an effect. In very grindy games and a lot of back and forth games, especially in like very old formats, Spirit Reaper hitting something out of your opponent's hand was extremely scary, and that's actually why they wanted to get rid of it more than the fact that they are having trouble not beating over it. It's because if you cleared their board, you just turn Spirit Reaper to attack, hit them for a tiny amount of damage, and then take another resource from them. And that was really crippling in these very slow old formats. Fact Baylor, I already explained this. Like, all these cards, this was just like this was a thing. This was a thing. It was a thing I really enjoyed because the deck makes no sense until you play it. There is no strategy behind it. Most of these monsters have no synergy with each other. It is just the fact that you are playing good cards. Can you manage them well? And this deck has a decent number of regional tops during its time period. And it's weird because this isn't a strategy we'll probably ever see in Yu-Gi-Oh! Again. But playing good monsters and just using them wisely was an actual win condition back in the day. And it made this deck. It's cookie cutter chaos, chaos stun, chaos control, whatever you want to call it. This was a thing. And as you can tell by my long spiel about this deck, I actually really enjoyed this deck. Before Lair of Darkness came out, this was my favorite deck of all time. Like, a lot of people say, oh, I like Chaos Blade, but Chaos Blade is a combo deck that doesn't manage resources. And my favorite thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is resource management. It is the thing not only that I enjoy, but I think it's the most skillful thing about this game. And it's kind of a dying art in a game that was literally made around it because there's no mana system. I find it very strange that they're killing off the idea of Yu-Gi-Oh! About resource management when cards can just get you cards upon cards. Literally within 4 or 5 steps, you've went like +5, +6. I think it's really, really hurting. Like, not only like the way we play the game now, but I think it's hurting the future potential of this game and the return of older players, because a lot of people aren't like leaving this game because the combos or like all this or the new or the power creep. Actually, none of that matters. The problem is that the resource management in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is becoming less and less important. And that's really what good players, bad players like me, and players that actually just want to think out what they're doing, like, as much as we like shit on stun decks for being monkey decks, realistically, a combo deck that you just need to memorize the combo is not that big brain. As soon as you memorize the combo, the only skillful part comes against playing against someone who is interacting with your cards. You fish bowling in a solo room has no skill to it. You're literally, I want to say it's like you're doodling. You're not actually playing a game, you're doodling. And like, if you're not playing with another person, then you're not really playing the game. You're just kind of fish bowling. That's another rant I want to get out of the way. And I want to get to the final point. I am going to remake this deck, and it's either going to come out at least playable, or it's going to fail miserably, and I'm going to be really upset. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remake this deck one way or another. I got really inspired seeing 2 tour guides again, meaning you can actually play tour guide as it was originally intended. Like, I'm going to remake this deck. If you guys want to see more of it, if you guys want to see me do it, let me know. If you think this is a horrible waste of time, also let me know. Because it's going to be a very weird process on how I build this deck. Because I could just throw in 3 Inspector Border, 3 Dark Stun Monster, a BLS, and a bunch of trap cards. I don't want to do that. Because that's also not resource management. That's just brainless. I activate Floodgate, out it, and I lose. That's kind of brainless. I want to get the not only theme of the deck down, but also the play style, which was resource management. And that's what I'm going to be doing. But that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. And if you guys want to help out in the comments, that's fine too. I usually don't like saying comment down below for X or Y, because usually when YouTubers are saying that, they're usually just trying to prod at ad revenue because comments help with that. I don't make ad revenue, so I don't give a shit. But I actually really, really want to work on this deck. And if you guys have some pretty smart input, if you guys kind of understand where I'm coming from, or even if you don't and you're just curious and you want to try to help out, that's great. Like, I'm all ears. Like, this is going to be a difficult thing to do because the fundamental play style of this deck, the fundamental down to its core thing about this deck has been power crept. So it's going to be insanely difficult to see if we can get a functioning Chaos Stun list in the year 2020, when the last time this deck was playable was in February 2013. 7 years of this deck doing nothing. You can see why this is going to be difficult. But that's about it. Thank you all for watching, and remember, Master DinnerFlax will take your soul.